You're listening to Radio Aula Mundi.
Hi there, wherever you are. I'm Marco Rixecker, a freelance writer, reporter, producer, teacher, translator, tour guide, poet, singer, and songwriter. I speak several languages, and I am the creator and founder of Radio Aula Mundi, an evolving podcast station where no language and all languages are spoken. It's a multilingual mix of music, poetry, lectures, languages, interviews, documentaries, recipes, and a lot more, co-produced with the students of the Aula Mundi International Cultural Center. You can find us on radioaulamundi.bandcamp.com, podcasts.apple.com, Spotify, YouTube, Breaker, Player FM, Facebook. Search Radio Aula Mundi. The following narrative includes excerpts from a collection of testimonies and interviews entitled Let's Talk About It Anywhere in the World, where it is all about people's voices, accents, and speech patterns, hand in hand with my own personal anecdotes and observations. In addition to that, people are free to introduce themselves and speak their minds openly in their respective, often indigenous, languages and dialects without any paraphrases or expectations. So, let the story go on from there. One of the indigenous publications that I browse from time to time is the Navajo Times, the largest newspaper in Navajo land, the Navajo Reservation in the Southwestern United States. That's where I see an article featuring an interview with a young woman, an artist by the name of Hadiibah John. It describes her as someone who follows the ancestral ways and traditions of her forefathers, which she combines with modern technology and practicalities in her artwork. A good example of the kind of artistic combination Hadiibah John likes to create is ancestral Navajo art and Japanese anime and manga. For the most part, does the article in the Navajo Times focus on that part of Hadiibah John's work as an artist. And it makes me curious about the personality behind the work, as well as all the other interesting things Hadiibah John might do. So I reach out and ask for an online conversation from different places in the world. One of the things I'm curious about is the place where she lives, her surroundings, the corresponding soundscapes, her spiritual connections with it all, and the ways her artwork would reflect all that. My conversation with Hadiibah John won't just boil down to questions and answers. There will also be ideas and suggestions involving her ancestral traditions and contemporary culture. Especially the use of Dîné, the Navajo language, is going to change our conversation into an exchange of thoughts, ideas, insights, and suggestions way beyond questions and answers. As an artist, she uses social networks to sell some of her work, but definitely deserves a place of her own in museums and galleries, a world which Hadiibah John would have to reconcile with the indigenous ceremonies and rituals that she grew up with.
My name is Hadiibah John. I am an acrylic painter. I live in Kayenta, Arizona, and the time is 4:36.
Hadiibah John goes by the book when she introduces herself in English for the record, so I decide to take things outside the box a little bit and introduce myself to her in the Navajo language, or Dîné, as it is called. It motivates Hadiibah John to introduce herself again in a traditional way and in her native language.
Yat Hadiibah John Yinishya. Hohieg lini nishle, na kai Dîné e bashes chin, Mudich ini e dashiche, do titna jini e dashinale. Akut ego, Astan lishle, also, Pudineshe de nasha.
One thing that becomes clear from the start is that Hadiibah John's artwork mirrors who she is. Her identity as a person is a reflection of where she comes from, her cultural roots, and her clans. And this is what the early part of our conversation focuses on.
I basically said, hello, my name is Hadiibah John. I am born for the Water Flows Together tribe, and I am also the Wandering People tribe, or also known as the Mexican People clan. It has two names. And after that, I said, my maternal grandparents' clan is Bitterwater clan. And after that, I said, my paternal family is the Blackstreak People clan. In this way, I am a Navajo woman, and I am from Kayenta, Arizona.
What do you do actually?
What I actually do? Well, for now, I'm basically a farmer, a rancher. My family is raising sheep, so I take care of the sheep right now.
How much do these ancestral traditions make it into your artwork?
A lot of it is basically basically 90% of it, down to the concept, the ideas, and even the color scheme. For the color scheme, a lot of the paintings focus on the four sacred colors, and then from there it branches out, and that's why a lot of the artwork is so bright and colorful.
Could you please elaborate a little bit on the four sacred colors?
Yeah. In our mythology, our four sacred colors also represent four sacred elements, and those elements came from four sacred mountains. And the four sacred mountains came into being from the different levels of the world of creation, basically. And the four elements are basically white shell, abalone shell, black jet, and turquoise. And that's how we get white, yellow, blue, and black.
So how important is your hometown and your home region to you and what you do?
My hometown is basically where I'm able to ground myself whenever I travel or whenever I try to do new things, or when I basically try to find out more ideas that are available around the world. It's basically a place to, I don't know, like keep keep a good mind, a good positive influence, I guess, because it's a lot of what's around my home is basically the same since, I don't know, since my grandparents. So it's easy to stay humble and grounded here because hardly anything has changed here.
If right now you looked out your window, what would you see?
You would see the small town, like all the houses, the apartments, the different school buildings, the junctions, the vehicles. But if you go further out, you see red rock mesas, you see the green trees that dot the whole entire area. You see the different washes, and you see the blue skyline and the white clouds, and that section always stays the same.
Which place in the world would be most similar to your hometown?
Oh, that's a tough one. I suppose in like structures of natural formations, I guess Utah would be similar. But in the sense of the feeling I get when I'm around the town, I suppose I haven't really found that anywhere else yet, because each place I've gone to is always a little more different than what I feel here at home.
So again, in the article I've read about Hadiibah John and her artwork, the focus is on her combination between traditional Navajo art and Japanese anime and manga. It's the reason why I use Japan as an angle to get into arts as a topic. Which part of you is Navajo land and which part of you is Japan?
Oh, let's see. I guess my physical side of me is more of Navajo land, but more of my, I don't know, more of my mind is towards Japan, I guess, if I had to put it one way or the other. Yeah.
Why Japan?
Well, when I was growing up, I used to watch a lot of movies, and I used to watch my brother play a lot of video games, and a lot of what he influenced on me, a lot of what he watched, a lot of what he saw, a lot of it came from Japan. So that's why a lot of it really started to influence me. I did branch out. I did look at stuff from Europe. I did branch out into different parts of Asia, but I did respond more to Japan because I guess it's the idea of keeping culture alive there that's a little easier for me to understand than in different areas. And that's why I'm influenced so much by it.
Hadiibah John is deeply connected with her cultural roots. That's where she's coming from. But all kinds of new art forms is where she is heading. What are your two most opposite influences?
I guess the main thing for traditional, it would be the idea of warriors and the idea of the traditional yeis that we paint. Those are basically opposite, because for warriors we see it as more of the negative side, and then the yeis and the ceremonies we paint, it's more of the positive side. So that's what I would put it as.
What's the vibe right now?
Ooh. A lot of what I've seen so far is that people are trying to show that the new modern version of what Dîné is, or the modern contemporary version of what Dîné means, since we've seen a lot of the traditional meaning, the traditional representation of what a Dîné person is. So a lot of the people are starting to challenge that. So that's a lot what the vibe is now.
How do you reconcile inventiveness with stereotypes?
Oh, well, I do try to stay away from stereotypes, but I have seen some people use a stereotype to create a new conversation, and I haven't tried to use that to apply to my style. But I might be thinking about doing that in the near future with my art. So yeah.
So how artistic do you feel today?
Ooh. I feel like I'm ready to start doing some new pieces, because I've been traveling a lot, so I've been seeing a lot of new things, a lot of new landscapes, and just feeling a lot of new atmosphere from different people that I've been around from traveling. So I I guess you could say all of that has turned into artistic essence, and I want to use it now.
What are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working on creating acrylic sheets with acrylic paint pieces on it, and then framing it to make it look more three-dimensional. Kind of like a mixed media piece.
What is the last thing you've recently learned?
Ooh. I actually basically learned how to convert regular acrylic paints to fabric paint by mixing in different mediums and then applying it.
What has been your most creative accomplishment recently?
I would have to say just, since it's creative, I would put it as actually sewing my first skirt on my own, because I wanted to try doing that while I'm in this area, since I see a lot of people that know how to do it. Like I go to the flea market and I see elderlies sell what they sell, so I was like, I should try to do that and see how it is, since I see so many people that already know how to do it.
So, the Kayenta area on the Navajo Reservation, that is Hadiibah John's original word. But she has been able to travel and put everything into different perspectives. What's the coolest landscape you've seen recently?
It was actually a major city, like back east, and we were just driving through, so I didn't get to see which city it was, but I saw the main downtown area, and it was right at the time of golden hour, just as the sunset's going down. So is the major skyscrapers of the city. So the whole glass reflection of the different buildings. There were some tall, straight skyscrapers, and then there were some curved domes within that area. So that whole section just looked really unique, especially with all the sunlight.
What's the coolest sound you've heard recently?
Coolest sound was basically when we were driving through the forests and it was getting a little stormy. The wind, you could hear the wind moving the dried up leaves on the tree branches. And at the same time, you could also hear the distant thundering of the clouds. So the mixing of the two sounded really nice.
So what kind of a thunderstorm was it? A male thunderstorm or a female thunderstorm?
It was a male thunderstorm. It was really dark gray clouds in the sky and lightning shooting from the clouds. It hadn't reached the ground yet, so the lightning hadn't produced super loud thunder yet. But because the majority of the storm was still farther back, that's where majority of the lightning was meeting the ground. So it would come from a farther distance and be more of a subtle boom rather than large thundering boom.
How would you translate that into some artwork of yours?
I guess it would be through the colors and basically the texture. Like for the little droplets, the chiming of the leaves, it could be interpreted into the texture or into the small highlights within the piece. And then for the thunder, I guess you could make it as more the soft, smoother portion of the canvas and made that into thick acrylic paint. Or it could be more of the dark shading that goes into the piece.
If you could write a book of fiction or make a Hollywood movie, what would it be about?
Oh man. I suppose I would make a story about a younger person, kind of like, I guess, middle school age, high school age, a character that kind of struggles to find balance in their life, be it through some kind of internal struggle or some kind of struggle that's part of their home, or something that's just out of their control and they just have to navigate their way through it. Maybe some kind of, I guess, a war, but not to say like a traditional war between countries or traditionally like war between different kinds of people. Something a little more like ideals, I guess, or more emotions.
What's it like to walk in beauty?
For me, it's basically trying to make sure that I keep or remember the traditional side of myself while also keeping the new modern ideas that come along or that are created. And from that, I can hopefully balance my life so that I can become a good role model for other people, either be it people my age, younger than me, or even some that are older than me. Yeah.
So, Hadiibah John is the kind of person whose emotions speak for her identity and artwork. And her creations reflect all kinds of senses, including sound, feeling, and touch. So that's what my next questions focus on. Some of them are even meant to catch her a little off guard. Do you really mean understanding with your mind or understanding with your heart?
I started off as a kid as understanding as more with my mind, since I knew nothing about like how their everyday culture worked, how their traditional culture worked, and the differences between those two, and the subcultures that developed from all of it. And now, I guess that I'm a little older, basically an adult, I'm starting to kind of delve into understanding with my heart, since I've given more time and more experiences to try and focus on that more than just my mind.
What were some of the hurdles you had to overcome?
The first one was basically figuring out the pattern I wanted to use, or if I would just go in blind and just go with my gut to how a skirt is made rather than doing research and looking up patterns. And from there, I also had to figure out if I wanted to use certain fabrics or if I just wanted to use what I have. Ideas like that.
How and where can people find your artwork actually at the moment?
At the moment, I post my artwork mainly on Facebook and on Twitter. I do get inquiries like when I freshly post a new piece, people ask like if it's for sale or how much the price would be, or sometimes when it's a different older piece, some people ask for commissions, or sometimes people ask if I can do a print of the piece.
How could you sell your artwork to a blind person?
Ooh. I suppose I could market it as a textured piece, because sometimes I do use sand texture in my pieces. So from the sand texture, the texture you get from using thick acrylic and paint strokes, you could feel the movement that comes from the piece, and from that get an essence of what is on the canvas.
You know, that's what you should do at some point. Maybe have an art show where people are blindfolded, and that's how
Ooh.
they explore your artwork.
Well, yeah, that would be awesome. Because
Yeah.
I have done a few mixed media pieces where I do mix different paper textures, like handmade paper, and then I mixed it with sand texture. And on top of that, I also mixed in acrylic and clay onto the canvas.
Which artwork of yours would be best for a radio audience?
Ooh, radio audience. Maybe, I think the first piece I did as a kid, since that one is more abstract and more simple, and I would describe it as a medium 12 by 24 piece, basically a rectangle. It has pencil marks that are in slight curved zigzags going up and down vertical, and opposing that straight single horizontal lines that go across. In the color, there would be a mixture of pink, purple haze, and some splotches of yellow in the right corner, and then some white washing that drips down to the base in the bottom left corner. And in the middle, there would be like small handprint, fingerprint dots. And at the very bottom of the right, you would see Hadiibah spelled in white paint.
Which artwork of yours convinced you that you are an artist?
Ooh. Yes, one that convinced me that I was an artist would have to be a piece where I used clay on masonite board, and then I mixed in fabric and paint, and from that I created basically a 3D image of a dancer. And just from piecing all those together in the right way, it made the movement, it made the concept come alive. I do classify it as a Yeti dancer, but it doesn't look that way. It looks more like I don't know, I guess it's hard to describe what kind of dancer it would be, because it doesn't really look like anything being like a person. It's just like fabric in motion with a face, I guess you could say.
What kinds of emotions make you want to dance?
Ooh. It would, oh man, I basically like anything and everything. So there's a lot that would make me want to dance. Just like certain harsh sounds, certain soft sounds, certain upbeat sounds. I guess it would be oh, even electronic sounds make me want to dance. I guess the one that really always makes me want to at least toe tap, depending on the situation, is just a simple sound of drumming. It can be like rock type drums that are super fast, super energized, or it can be something simple like more like your traditional two-step drum beat that we have here.
Why shouldn't we listen to the younger generation?
Uh, uh, I mean, most of the time, the younger generation should listen to the elders because the older you are, the more experiences you have having lived a longer life. But also, because younger people haven't had as many experiences, it's easier for them to see new paths with total, complete unbiasedness, I guess you could say. So sometimes there is a reason to listen to a younger person just because it could be a concept that hasn't been explored and it could lead to new paths. Because in a lot of our mythology, that is what happens. It's the younger heroes that create the new paths that let us come to new, better places or learn new and better skills. But they still take with them the wisdom the older people give them.
The end of my conversation with Hadiibah John is meant to get her to ask me questions. The idea is to tie in some of the most recent experiences she might have had the very day of our online conversation from different places in the world. And it feels like an honor to hear her say thank you in Navajo to end our conversation. Ahehe means thank you. But its use at the end of the interview also reflects the fact that there is no real word for goodbye in the Navajo language. As a consequence, our conversation will continue at some point, anytime, anywhere in the world. And the story goes on from there. What else should we know?
I also try to focus, or I also try to practice things with technology, because I also have background in that. I basically like to do the hands-on portion of technology, like with wires, and just the physical portion of that.
What can I do for you?
Ooh. Oh man. That's pretty tough. Well, I guess since I'm kind of new to the whole social media stuff, do you have any tips on how to, I guess, overcome the shyness, I guess? Since you talk to so many people that are from different places, different backgrounds, how do you, do you have any tips for getting over shyness in that sense? Yeah.